We're talking a little bit of college football and the idea of athletes being paid. Time Magazine this week, the cover story is Johnny Manziel. And the question is, should athletes get paid? And the author, Sean Gregory, joins us on the program. Sean, from Time Magazine, also leads all corporate leagues in technical fouls as a player during the stuff, but that's a separate story. Sean, what is Johnny Manziel worth at Texas A&M?
Chris, if there are some studies that say, and these are a little aggressive, if say college athletics had the same revenue sharing models as the NFL. So if you take Texas A&M's revenue, give 46% to the players and divide it up evenly, he would probably get $225,000, and that's based on that math. Obviously, maybe they wouldn't be paid equally. Manziel can get more. So there's that measure, but then there's just the common sense measure of, this is a program that most recent numbers has $52 million in revenues. Retail value of all Texas A&M merchandise is something like $74 million. It went up 20%. A lot of that has to do with they're in the SEC now, but, having the Heisman Trophy winner doesn't hurt. Brazos County, where A&M is, there's a study that says home Texas A&M football games, all kind of business sales, $86 million. It's a lot, this is a professionalized environment. And so, there's an argument to be made that why doesn't he deserve a professionalized salary?
If Johnny Manziel was a free agent like the NFL has free agency, how much would he be worth to a college program?
Man, it's hard to pinpoint. You could $1 million. If Texas makes $103 million a year on football, so to get the best quarterback in football in a free agent market, how much would you pay him? Maybe it's $2 million, maybe it's $10 million. Those numbers seem hard to fathom. But the reason they seem hard to fathom is because for years and years and years, the cash compensation wages for college athletes has been essentially zero. So it's hard to wrap your head around it. But at the same, if you flip it around, there's people all over college campuses that have a lot of money, family money and stuff. If a football player has a lot of money, is that so quote-unquote corrupt? I don't know.
How close, Sean, is the system to changing? You write a great story this week. It's on the cover of Time Magazine about how it should change and suggesting ways it could change. But how realistic is it that athletes will start to receive compensation?
And here's the issue. There's the O'Bannon lawsuit, which could shake things up. But that aside, the people who rewrite the rules are the people who control the system now, and the system works for them. Money, where does the money go? It goes into facilities. It goes into coaches' salaries. It goes into the NCAA bureaucracy where folks are making a lot of money. So there's not a ton of incentive internally to change. So do I think the NCAA themselves, the schools themselves, are going to rewrite the rules to make a totally free market? I would not make that bet. However, Congress is starting to get interested in this stuff. Lawmakers are starting to get interested in this stuff. So it might take, the federal government to rewrite the rules for them. But that's tricky too, because every time Congress gets involved in sports, people say they have better things to do. But this is a business practice that you can really argue is fundamentally unfair. With all the money going to schools, how much there's an ethical argument to be made that you should care about this, even if you don't care a lick about college football or basketball.
When you open the door for athletes to get paid, the next logical question is who should get paid? Should it just be football players and basketball players that create the most revenue, or are soccer players or swimmers and fencers and whatnot? Are they entitled to some revenue as well? Where do you draw the line, Sean, in what guys should get paid?
It's tricky. So if you imagine a model where you give schools a certain amount of money to kind of get, you don't have to pay players, but give them the option to do it. And, the NCAA is very regulated, so you're probably going to have some kind of regulated salary number. You could distribute it how you want. Why shouldn't schools have the ability to do that? Now, the economic argument is the men's football players and the football players and men's basketball players, they for the bulk of revenue, athletic departments, they generate the bulk of the revenues. Now, if you wanted to just pay the men, Title IX does come into effect, but you can make it's not entirely clear that Title IX would disqualify schools from just paying men. The argument would be, are you discriminating against women by not paying them? Okay, but there's also the argument that you're not discriminating against women because you're still given the opportunity to play sports, and Title IX is ultimately about opportunity. But you're paying the men extra because of the economic argument that their sports generate the bulk of the profits and the revenues. How that would fly in court, that's to be determined. You can also, if the government got behind this idea, they can clarify Title IX as far as how it goes to payment. Men's coaches get paid a lot more than women's coaches in general. So there's already inequity there. It would be really interesting how that would play out.
Got about 30 seconds left, Sean. If you, 5 years from now, if we're having the same conversation, where do you think the rules are going to look like?
I would bet that the big schools will have I would bet rewriting the rules for themselves, and probably still you could stay within the NCAA framework where you at least in 5 years have the cost of attendance covered. Now that can be $2,000, that could be $3,000, that could be $4,000. I think they're going to move to giving all athletes that, and so that's kind of the first step. For the free marketeers, it doesn't get close to covering what they're worth, but when you're going from zero, any step is positive.
Good to talk to you, Sean.
Thanks, Chris.
It's Sean Gregory, Time Magazine.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.